Hey guys, I'm actually now editing a video that you're about to watch, and I just wanted to let you know I'm speaking in a lower volume in this video because my 2-year-old nephew was asleep in the other room. So, because of that, I was speaking in a lower volume in that video. Just giving you a heads up before you watch the video. Now, enjoy the video! Hello ladies and gentlemen, and with every end of the year tradition, you gotta do your top 10 worst movies of the year list and top 10 best movies of the year list. I decided to start from the top 10 worst list because the top 10 best is much more special, so I decided to save it for a little later. But starting my top 10 worst list of movies of 2023, first I'll have to say that there were plenty of terrible movies done this year, and I haven't even seen plenty of them, I just outright avoided them. So this list will just only include the terrible movies of this year that I have seen. So if you think there's some really terrible movie that's not on this list, chances are I likely haven't seen it, because again, this list is specifically for the worst movies of 2023 that I've seen. Now let's get on with actual worst movies of 2023. And starting at number 10 is The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Yeah, I was kind of hopeful for this movie because I really liked the story of Dracula, and I thought that the chapter about the Demeter was a really interesting chapter, and as many people have been saying, it could totally work as a movie of its own. So of course, I was pretty interested in this movie. But then the actual movie was terrible. Like, the characters were bland and boring, which is a shame because the cast was actually pretty good, and but as I said, the characters were boring, badly written and all, and the script was terrible. The only thing I liked about the movie is the atmosphere. Admittedly, was pretty good. The atmosphere and the visuals, good. Everything else, pretty bad, and one of the most disappointing movies of 2023, and number 10 on the list. Number 9, Scream 6. And now I think this is a perfect example of a franchise that just needs to retire, because outside of the early ones, none of the Scream movies were particularly good. I mean, the early ones were pretty good, but none of the others were particularly good. And I'm in general not a huge fan of slashers, but it is ironic that the movie that ironically very much started the slasher genre now is probably the worst at actually making a good slasher, because characters are unlikable and they're all boring, and as a result I didn't care what happens to them, so there was no suspense whatsoever, and honestly I found the twist of who actually the killer was pretty predictable and kind of cliche at this point. Honestly, Thanksgiving this year was a much better slasher than Scream, and that because that movie had characters I actually cared about. But same cannot be said for Scream 6, or most of the recent Scream movies for that matter. Hence why I think it's time to just retire Scream. Number 8. And this is the first Disney movie on this list, and that's The Little Mermaid. Like, in general, I'm really sick of those Disney live-action remakes. They are just like almost retellings of their original animated counterparts, but completely lack any magic of them. Like, I'm really done with all those Disney live-action remakes, and The Little Mermaid is no different. I literally refused to see this movie in theater, and I was right when I later watched it on Disney Plus. Like, and I strongly disagree when people say that, oh, Ariel's and Eric's romance was much better here. Nope. Just because they shared more screen time together doesn't mean the romance was actually better. In the animated classic, Ariel seemed so interested in Eric, but here she didn't seem interested in him at all. And in general, the animated Little Mermaid is like one of the best Disney animated movies, but this, it's like another cheap live-action remake that absolutely nobody needs, and it completely lacks magic of the original movie. But this is also the very first Disney movie on this list, and there will be a lot more, which also shows what is now happening to Disney. So, speaking of which, at number 7, this is so embarrassing, but Disney's Wish. And this is just so embarrassing because this movie is supposedly for Disney's 100th anniversary, and this is what they're giving us for their 100th anniversary. Like, come on, that's a studio that has made so many awesome animated classics like Pinocchio, Beauty and the Beast, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Sleeping Beauty, The Lion King, Tangled, Wreck-It Ralph, and now we're getting this? Seriously? That's the movie that they should pick the most talented artists, and those artists should put all their love and effort into it. But instead, we are just getting this movie with pretty good animation, but other than that, a very bland and boring heroine that doesn't learn anything by the end of the movie. A villain with pretty interesting and weird motivation that doesn't get delved into at all, and in some ways you can argue it actually makes sense, but we're just supposed to accept what the movie is telling us, and also pretty terrible and forgettable songs. This is really embarrassing and further shows what Disney has become. It looks like we've likely entered another dark age of Disney, but the sad thing is that this time we're likely not getting out of it. Sad thing to say, but this movie very much shows that Disney at this point is simply a shell of what it used to be, and it will likely never return to glory. And by the way, I have to say this. I'm lowering my volume because my nephew is asleep in the other room, so that's why I'm speaking with a lower volume for this video. Number 6, the Marvels. And that also shows what is happening to Marvel. Like, until Endgame, Marvel movies were so great and so interesting and engaging, and then post Endgame, the only really good Marvel movies were Spider-Man Far From Home, No Way Home, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Those are really great movies that very much remind me of the Marvel's glory days. But other than that, you can't really say any of the Marvel movies have been particularly good, and the Marvels is a perfect example. The worst Marvel movie will always be Captain Marvel, but the Marvels being slightly better than Captain Marvel doesn't say much, and still Captain Marvel is still the same really mean, annoying character that doesn't learn anything and doesn't change throughout the story, and she's so bland too. While Miss Marvel, although she was kind of likable in the Miss Marvel show, but in this movie she's just such an annoying brat and all, and also the way the story constantly disrespects Nick Fury. This is just all stupid, and also the villain here is like one of the worst, most bland villains I've ever seen, and the action isn't even good. Yeah, The Marvels is one of the worst Marvel movies I've ever seen, and one of the worst of 2023. Number 5, Five Nights at Freddy's, and this is the movie I was actually kind of hyped for. I don't know why, but maybe because we've actually got some really good game adaptations this year, like Super Mario Bros. Movie, or last year Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Actually, both Sonic the Hedgehog movies were really good. And Netflix Castlevania, the first one, is still one of my favorite shows ever, so I guess that made me a little too overhyped. Plus, the trailers also looked pretty good, and I really liked the design of the animatronics, so I guess that all made me way too overhyped for this movie, because the actual movie was pretty bad. Other than the good design of the animatronics, the story is pretty cliche and predictable, and the characters are boring and uninteresting, and also, but the worst part is that this movie should have been rated R. It's rated PG-13, likely to attract more audiences, but that very much also harmed the movie. This is one of those movies that would strongly benefit from R rating. It still wouldn't have been particularly great, but the R rating would very much benefit this movie. As how it is faithful to the games, I haven't played the games, so I can't speak on that. I do respect the games, I do know they have lots of fans, so I very much respect the games, but personally, I can't really speak on how it relates to games because I've never played them. But they do seem interesting. I could try to get into them someday. Number 4, and that's the movie I was also looking forward to, and that's Cocaine Bear. Like, this movie is so stupid, and not even in a good way. I was looking forward to this movie because I heard it was based on a true story about an actual bear that was on cocaine, and I thought that could be interesting, especially that as a result that it was based on a true story, I thought it might not be like one of those cheesy monster animal movies, but an actual interesting movie with a good story, but the actual movie wasn't that at all. The whole story was stupid, so over the top, and everything was so silly in this movie, and the ending completely didn't even make sense and went against everything that the movie previously showed and established. Like, honestly, one of the stupidest movies I ever seen. I guess you could argue maybe this is one of those so bad it's good movies, but it's certainly not even for me. Like, for me, the movie was just plain dumb and I wasn't entertained at all. Number 3, Peter Pan and Wendy, and this is another terrible Disney live-action remake. I mean, they're all bad, but this one is one of the worst. It's better than Pinocchio, but that doesn't say much. Plus, animated Pinocchio is like my favorite Disney movie ever, and possibly my favorite animated movie ever. So, of course, I'm going to be biased against the live-action remake. But Peter Pan and Wendy is also one of the worst. Like, Peter is barely a character in his own movie, and Captain Hook backstory is so dumb, and Neverland doesn't feel magical at all, and TikTok the Crocodile is barely in a movie, and there is a lot of political messaging as well. In general, those Disney live-action remakes basically confirm what I already said when I was talking about Wish. Here, Disney just has lost its magic completely at this point. Number 2, and that's very similar case to Cocaine Bear, and that's Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. I haven't even reviewed this movie actually. I skipped it at first and then I just seen it on TV, and the movie is horrible. It's horrible. And in fact, I'm going to say technically this movie should be number 1 because, as someone else already said, it honestly feels like this movie was specifically made to just be terrible. But my number 1 is actually more personal to me, that's why I'm going with a different movie for number 1. But from a pure filmmaking objective standpoint, then this easily takes the first place. I mean, it's just so terrible. Like, Pooh and Piglet look like just some men dressed in costumes, and the whole concept is so dumb. I guess it could work for the so bad it's good story, but it's not even that. It's just plain stupid through and through, and honestly, it just feels like it was specifically made to be bad, because I can't even say that the creators didn't try. It feels like they deliberately went out their way to just make the movie as terrible as possible. I didn't expect the movie to be good, but I didn't expect to see something so terrible. And as I've been saying, from a pure objective standpoint and filmmaking standpoint, this easily takes number 1. The only reason it's not is because my actual number 1 is more personal, and my actual number 1 is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This movie is such an insult to an awesome franchise. First 3 Indiana Jones movies, magnificent, fantastic masterpieces. I adore first 3 Indiana Jones movies. Then Kingdom of the Crystal Skull had some good ideas, but I do think it was silly and stupid at times. When Crystal Skull was good, it was good. But when it was stupid, it was very stupid. But Dial of Destiny is just plain bad. Some interesting ideas completely thrown away and wasted, and then Indiana Jones being completely relegated to a secondary character, and instead his goddaughter takes over, and she isn't even likable. She's such an annoying, badly written character. And also what I said in my review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I remember how I actually praised the beginning sequence of the movie, but looking back, even that sequence I don't think was particularly awesome. It was nostalgic, and when I was seeing it, nostalgia very much kicked in, but with time I realized that sequence is not as great as at first you think it is. I mean, sure, it's nostalgic, but the more you think about it, the more you realize you've seen it before, but much better. And the villain also is one of the most bland villains I've ever seen in Indiana Jones, and the ending is very forced. Sure, because it was changed, because originally we were going to get an even worse ending that nobody wanted to see, so obviously they were so desperate they decided to film a different ending, but as a result the ending of the movie feels just so forced, and it feels so unsatisfying. Honestly, this is a perfect example of the movie that should never be made. Crystal Skull, I don't care. Some good things, so I don't care if Crystal Skull is canon or not. I could go either way, but this movie doesn't belong in the Indiana Jones canon. It's the worst Indiana Jones movie, and for me, the most insulting movie of 2023, even if my number 2, Blood and Honey, is objectively the actual worst one. But here are my top 10 worst movies of 2023. Stay tuned for the best list of 2023. And this is something I'm really looking forward to show you, because there were also plenty of great movies this year, and I'm really looking forward to share those with you. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for best movies of 2023 and press the like button, subscribe this channel, and I will talk to you in top 10 best movies of 2023. Talk to you right then. Bye.